Story. Alright, Grip. This is a book I bought in 2011 by my favorite comedian at the time, and I never read it, and I always wanted to. It's called This Is a Book by Demetri. He was a stand-up comedian that had a sketch show at the time. And I fell in love with him. And that was right around the time that I started teaching. And from his sketch show, I actually used a lot of his jokes in class. And when I ordered the book, he included these autographed stickers that I didn't know, but my mom found the stickers and stuck them in the book for me so I wouldn't lose them. Which is cool. Alright, this is a book called Demetri by Demetri. Chapter 1. Oop, I missed a chapter. How to read this book. If you're reading this sentence, then you've pretty much got it. Good job. Just keep going the way you are. Alright, the first, and I think it's a collection of short stories. Yeah, I thought the music was good, right? Federal Trade Commission, thank you so much for coming and hanging out. I hope to see you next time. If you enjoyed it, feel free to give me a follow. And if not, have a good night. Thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate it. Alright, Chapter 1, Megaphone. They say your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. I think this is true. For me, it would definitely be my megaphone. It all started when I got the megaphone. It was a gift from my friend Doug. I remember that moment clearly. Doug and I were standing in his garage looking for his turtle when I noticed the megaphone just sitting there quietly. I asked Doug if I could have it. He said, sure. Then he picked it up and handed it to me. That moment would change my life forever. I went to the megaphone right away. Right after Doug handed it to me, the first word I said through it was, thank, and then right after that, you. But I really let it ring out, like, you! Doug didn't seem that thrilled with me. I think that's a common sort of reaction when someone gives something away and then realizes how great the thing they just gave away was. It was right after I tried out the siren function that Doug really started to seem irritated about his decision to give away the great microphone. I didn't want to make the situation any worse, so I just said, hello? Through the megaphone and made a face that said, this thing isn't really that great. I think that helped because Doug stopped shaking his head and cursing at me. At first, everything with the megaphone was great. It came in really handy in the obvious situations. I would be meeting a friend somewhere, and I'd use it to call out to him so he could find me in a crowd, and then I'd use the megaphone to get someone to move out of my way on the sidewalk or in line at the pharmacy. I've always hated boring street performers. Thanks to the megaphone, I finally had a real outlet to express that. And you know, I never really knew what thinking out loud meant until I did it through the microphone. It made my thinking way more out loud and more outlandish too. Like a lot of people, I've always enjoyed commenting on strangers' outfits. Unlike a lot of people, I now had a new megaphone to do it with. And let me tell you, commenting on people's hilarious clothing choices through a megaphone makes it so much better. With the megaphone, I also started to get noticed a lot more by women, especially whenever I tried to guess their name or bra size as they walked by. One thing you learn pretty quickly with a megaphone is that it's hard not to say, step right up through it. For me, that proved to be most problematic at carnivals and soup kitchens. I discovered that if there's one thing carnies and soupies have in common, is that they do not like to step right up and then find that there's nothing there besides a guy with a megaphone. One thing I learned to do was to get that megaphone away from my face pretty quickly after saying my thang through it. Because people love nothing more than to push a megaphone straight into the mouth of its master. And in case you didn't know, that equals big trouble for your teeth. A good trick is to have a backup megaphone. That way, when someone takes or smashes your first one, you have another one right there ready to go. Ideally cranked to full volume for when you give them the old nice try through it. After a while, I entered what I call my do-gooder phase with my megaphone. If I saw a fire, I would make alarm sounds through the megaphone to alert people to get out of there. This would irritate the firefighters and sometimes make them aggressive. But this was never a problem as long as I ran away before the fire was over, while the firefighters were still busy being heroes. If I heard the police talking through one of their megaphones, I would join in and add little endings to the things that they said. If they said pull over to a driver, I might add he means it or comprende if the person looked kind of Spanish. The megaphone proved to be a great way to help blind people too. I'd sometimes shout helpful directions through the megaphone to guide a blindie if I saw one. Sometimes I could even make it into a little game for myself and narrate what the person was doing. There he goes. It looks like he's headed toward the curb now. Oh, he's feeling it out. Up he goes. This guy has hardly bumped into anything so far. You learn a lot when you have a megaphone. You learn that children's ears are more sensitive than adults, and that the parents of those children can have really short fuses. You also learn that it's hard to take back things that you've said through a megaphone, and that it's not the best way to break up with somebody. It is easier to meet up with a megaphone. Is it easier to meet women with a megaphone? Yes. Does that mean you should use the megaphone when you sleep with one of them? No, absolutely not, no matter how right it may feel at the time. As I got more into the megaphone, I found that certain people really seemed to have a hard time with it, including friends, family, acquaintances, strangers, and most other people too. It showed me just how jealous people can become when someone finally finds his calling. But I guess that's people for you. As I learned and experimented more, I started to get really good with the megaphone. I could answer through it and make it sound like a normal speaking voice, as I mixed my whisper with the phone's mega mechanism. The more I used the megaphone, the better I became at using it. My creativity blossomed, and eventually I became what some might call a megaphone artist. I was able to use words like wistful and aplomb through the megaphone without it sounding too weird. Sometimes I would just turn on the megaphone and let it capture my breathing, which for some reason really pissed people off. But as skilled as I had become, I was beginning to rely on the megaphone too much. I carried it with me all the time. Whenever I felt awkward, I would reach for my megaphone and say just whatever came to mind, like do 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 do, or ta 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 ta, or do ta do ta, or heads up. My worst moment was probably the time I got drunk with the megaphone. If you thought I was talky regularly, you should see me with 2 or 12 shots of tequila in me. Needless to say, that night I ended up in the hospital. The doctor said the megaphone probably saved my life. Apparently, if I hadn't fallen asleep with the megaphone on my mouth, I would have puked into my mouth instead of into the megaphone, and that could have been fatal. Even though I was okay, that experience was a real wake-up call for me. It was clear that I had a problem, plus my megaphone now smelled terrible. I decided it was time to give up the megaphone, and I quit megaphoning cold turkey. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. Immediately, I could feel how badly I needed something to fill the void. I found myself using anything I could as a megaphone. Rolled up paper, my hands, pancakes. I even tried talking into a bag, but that proved to be dangerous, especially during some of my longer rants. I was lost. Then one day, while I was shouting through a parking code that I found on Doug's newly paved driveway, I had a revelation. Who am I kidding? I thought out loud to myself. These other objects I'm talking through are really just megaphones in disguise. I mean, even my mouth is just a little megaphone, right? Life is too short, and I have too much to say, Then Doug kind of charged at me and ripped the cone out of my hands and asked me to get off of his driveway. That's when I knew what I had to do. I got up and headed straight for the hardware store where I bought a brand new megaphone. The very one you have been hearing me speak through tonight, ladies and gentlemen. When I got that new megaphone, I put it to my mouth and I've never looked back since. Although I've certainly heard back, if you know what I mean. Thank you for listening. God bless and good night. Grant, I hope that was enjoyable for you. It certainly was for me. I like that a lot. That was fun, right? Banana bread. And I'll add children's stories for those of you who would prefer a children's story. It was great, right? That was the perfect end to the night. I love that. I'm so glad, Grant. On that note, thank you guys for coming out. I hate you all. And I hope to see you tomorrow. Brayden, yes, I didn't get a chance to respond, but I will go check it out. Federal Trade Commission, that's awesome. Welcome to our clan of idiots. I'm so glad to have you in the channel, man. Have a great night. Have a good night, guys. Sunset Heart Hands. I love you guys. Good night.